What up, fam? Welcome to Skill Tree, where we learn how to do just about everything. So far on this channel, I've been able to make some pretty cool pieces of armor and just kind of neat costume things. And those are things I definitely want to continue to level up in. In fact, the next armor build I have planned, I am so jazzed about. I can't wait for you to see it. But in making this stuff, I've noticed two issues of things that kind of slow me down / irk me a little bit. Issue the first is trying to pull measurements from myself, especially when I'm by myself, which, let's be honest, most of the time. I'm not sad, you're sad. The second issue is actually displaying these pieces. I work really hard on it, and I love how they come out, and I'd love to be able to kind of see them together in awesome form. So far, I've just been kind of draping all of it over my camera slider. And guys, I need that to make those really smooth, sexy panning shots, but I'm just way too lazy to take everything off of it whenever I need it. But no worries, because on today's episode, I've actually brought on a special guest who solves both of these problems. And like most of my friends, he's not real. Why do I hurt me so much? And the cherry on top of this weird cake / body horror of being able to dissect yourself like a frog in bio class is the fact that it only cost me like $70 to make, and it could be cheaper for you depending on which materials you go with. So before this guy gets a couple drinks in him and decides to get chatty, let's level up this skill. Building the body. So to start to sculpt this magnificent form into this foam monstrosity you see before you, no offense, I only need two things. One disposable painter suit, and just a whole bunch of duct tape. Also, you can forego the painter suit if you want. Like if you have a long sleeve shirt that you don't mind ripping apart and maybe some pajama pants, that would totally work. That being said, the coveralls are really thin, extremely inexpensive, and let's face it, super stylish. I also wanted my mannequin to have feet, so I added some socks to the mix as well. Once I was all geared up, it was time to whip out the D. Nope. Duct tape. It's time. The D is the duct tape. For starters, I taped the cuffs of my wrist into shape. You'll want the tape to be snug, but be really careful not to cut off your circulation. Trust me, you're gonna be stuck in this for a couple of hours, maybe longer if you make your helper angry. Next, I tucked my pants into my socks and taped them into place, making my very own little ghetto footy pajamas. After that, the neck hole was locked into place, being extra careful not to get any hair or to choke myself out. Then finally, I moved on to cinching in the waist and the real work of covering my whole body in tape. Now you're definitely gonna need at least one somebody else to help you with this. Just make sure you haven't, like, I don't know, taken their nice scissors or anything.
You took my nice scissors for this? Turn around.
Ugh. Also, just make sure it's someone you can generally have fun with. Like I said, there's gonna be like 2 hours of you just kind of standing still where they apply tape to you. You must feel super lucky to be my wife.
24 hours later.
Now, while doing this, we found the best results were achieved with smaller pieces of tape, rather than just trying to continually wrap it around your body. The goal here is to achieve complete coverage. Now, pro tip, relationship advice from your boy Clever. A person who will feed you beer through a straw, this is called a keeper. I guess it could be an enabler too. It's alright, I think we're all around pretty normal. How do you bond with your spouse?
Well,
I take her to the basement.
she wrapped me in duct tape.
She wrapped me in duct tape. Now, once you've achieved complete coverage with the tape going horizontally, you're gonna wanna reinforce it by adding more strips vertically. This not only adds strength, but will help keep our filling from finding spots to seep on through. And with that, my sexy duct tape cat suit was all complete. And this right here is where I realized I may have made a slight miscalculation with a smart-ass comment I made in my communications episode here.
It looks good.
Awesome. I can't move in this thing. Can you
Right.
cut me out now?
I think we're done.
Yeah, you just so the scissors are. Just go ahead and cut me out now.
Why don't you embrace discomfort a little bit?
I was kidding. Hey, I didn't even know you. Oh, shit. Turns out she does watch. But after your partner helps you up from the floor, several hours later, it's time to get cut out from your sticky wrappings. First though, you need to cut some guides where the cuts are gonna go, and then make registration marks all along them. These marks are super important as they're gonna help you line everything back up correctly when you go to put it back together. As you can see, our cuts go down the spine, back of the arms, and along the backs of both legs. My gray cocoon was then carefully cut along those lines until, finally, I emerged like a sweaty, beautiful man butterfly thing. That fell apart real quick, actually. But with that, the longest step of making our taped golem here is complete. It's time to move on to prepping the skin. Prepping the skin, is that really what I'm going with? Sounds really Silence of the Lambs. Now that you have the mannequin's skin all made up, it's time to seal back up those cuts that remain. Luckily though, we thought ahead and added those registration marks. All we need to do is line those back up and stitch the pieces back together with some more duct tape. Just make sure that you're butting the sides together, not overlapping. If you overlap them, you're taking up more space and the whole form is gonna be smaller than your actual measurements are. Now, I found this was a little bit easier when I stuffed something inside to help give the form some more shape back as I went. And once everything's all stitched together, seal up the rest of the seam completely to make the whole thing one piece again. In fact, the only area that I didn't stitch back together are the very bottoms of the feet. Having this part open is gonna help us mount the whole thing on a stand later on. So I really wanted to be able to disassemble this guy so I can dress him or take measurements of specific parts or just move him around more easily. To achieve this, do you mind? Rude. To achieve this and to also make it easier to fill with foam later, I decided to cut it at the waist as well as at either arm. Starting with the waist, I marked out where the cut should go, then added my registration marks. Next, I stuffed the shoulder area to better see the finished shape and marked them off as well. Happy with that placement, I went ahead and made my cuts. Just try to make them fairly symmetrical if possible. That's gonna make putting the whole thing back together just way easier. But with that all dissected, we now have a bit of a problem. As I mentioned earlier, I'm gonna fill this bad boy up with foam. With all those big gaping holes in place, the foam is just gonna leak out. To fix this, I started by using the shoulder openings on the arm as a guide and traced it onto some cardboard. Once that's all cut out, it fits right into the arm opening on the torso. Then plastering it in place with some more duct tape, I was able to cleanly seal up that space. Using this same method, I sealed up the neck, both armholes in the torso, and the wrist holes in both arms. And the legs stayed pretty much intact, so we really didn't have to do anything there. And with everything all sealed up, we can give our buddy here a little bit of structure and build the skeleton. So by incorporating an inner skeleton, you make it easier to attach your form to a base, as well as giving yourself some mounting points for all the limbs. To make mine, I just used about 18 feet worth of 3/4 inch PVC tubing. I also used 6 90-degree fittings, 4 T's, and 2 45s. I'll leave a shopping list of everything I bought down in the description below. Now first things first, you're gonna need to pull some measurements. Standing naturally, measure the distance between your 2 feet. Next, you're gonna wanna collect the distance between your hip joints. Finally, find the distance from the floor back up to your hip joint. Because your mannequin is your exact measurement, it's easy to just picture the bones going in the exact same spots your bones are. So armed with those measurements, let's start making the base that everything stands on. First, I cut 2 pieces at the distance we gathered from between your feet, 13 inches for me. Then add 90-degree fittings to their ends, 4 in all. Next, I cut some 16-inch lengths just to make sure that the base was long enough not to fall over when I added some weight. I cut those 16-inch pieces in half and added T-fittings to their centers to have a place to connect the rest of the skeleton to. Now with the base all set, I moved on to the hips. This is just made up from 2 90-degree fittings and a T, with enough pipe between them to equal my 10-inch measurement that I pulled from between my hip joints. Finally, I cut 2 lengths of PVC at that last measurement we gathered, from the floor up to my hip joint. When that's all put together, we have the basic frameworks for the legs and hips. Now before actually adding these to my legs, I decided to stuff the feet with some cotton. I just wasn't sure if the foam was gonna make it in there, and this was my last chance to address it before all of that was closed up. Then I slid my frame in like putting on a pair of pants, and made sure the ends came out through the heels. Adding the base to the bottom of the feet, I added enough duct tape to make sure all of the holes were sealed up correctly. Then I just stood it up and completed putting the base together. Finally, I added one more long piece of PVC as a spine to that T coming off the hips. The length doesn't matter as we're gonna be cutting most of that away anyways. Okay, so for one last bit of skeletal structure, I wanted to add this cross piece for the shoulders. Now take special note of the T-fitting in the middle there. To put this structure in place, I just cut a hole into the center of the cardboard that's sealing the armholes and fished the tubing through. Then, like everything else, I taped it up to avoid any of the foam leaking out. Okay, so the battery on my camera had died, but I also added a little spine, just like I did with the legs, to that T that I pointed out earlier. This is because I wanted to be able to join the upper body and the lower body together with like a PVC coupling at the end. You're gonna see though, I messed that up real good, so really kind of didn't matter. For now though, we are all done with our skeleton and we can move on to the final step. Stuffing the mannequin. Now at this point, you could totally just stuff it with like rags or newspaper or cotton. But I decided to try my hand at some expanding foam. It is strong, it's light, and it seemed like a really cool, durable material to use. The specific kind I used is this Sika fence post mix. I've used it before to set posts, and it's crazy easy to use and sets super fast. It's also by far the most expensive part of this build at $13 a bag. And to fill just the torso and the legs, I used 4 bags. Now if you decide to use this, make sure you lay down some plastic just in case it spills. Now as you fill them, this does cure really fast, so you're gonna want your forms to stay in shape. So if they start to like lean off to a side and that hardens, that's the position it's in, you're done. So to help with this, I strung up this line and hung some clamps along it. Then I just added some loops of duct tape to the sides of my silver pants here, so the clamps could support them in a standing position. Happy with their general shape, it's time to add the foam. Now that foam is actually a 2-part product that you need to combine and mix before you can use it. To mix these 2 sections together, you just roll the top section down until the inner seal pops and the chemicals are forced into one bag. And at this point, you only have about 15 seconds to mix them thoroughly before the reaction takes place and it starts to expand. Once time's up, cut the corner of the bag and dump the whole thing inside of your frame. Again, this stuff is crazy fast. In just about 10 minutes, the foam was all expanded and hardened to the touch. I then did the same thing with the torso and topped off any extra product in the space that was left in the legs. The end result had foam just above the brim on both of them. And that extra foam was really easily cut away with just a handsaw, as was the excess PVC. Now this is where I added that coupling and realized my mistake. At some point during the process, those 2 spine pieces had moved out of alignment. But I was able to come up with a plan B that I honestly like more. So in this past Monday's quick skill, I was able to show you how to make some ninja throwing spikes out of just some regular old timber spikes you find at Home Depot. By simply stabbing them into the foam, I was easily able to line up both halves and secure them into place. I did realize, by doing this project, that this quarantine may have made me put on a few pounds. Check out that butt though. Stop it. Okay, now that I am done objectifying myself, it's time to connect the arms. To get this done, I first cut back that extra PVC so that only about an inch remained out. We'll use that extra inch to attach this 45-degree fittings with a 6-inch pipe for some added structure to the arm. Now speaking of structure, the general shape to the opening of the arm wasn't really conducive to filling it with foam. So I just decided to stuff it with some pillow stuffing that I had laying around. Then, using the same cardboard trick that I used earlier to seal up the torso, I made some end caps and pushed them against the exposed pipe so I knew exactly where to cut. Then I just simply slid the cardboard into place and added that 45-degree fitting back. Then I used some duct tape just to tape it into position. And once that was taped into the space of the arm, I was able to stick that sucker right back where it went. And bam! That's a headless me! That's a headless me. It's a weird thing to be excited about, I realize. So because I could only withstand just so much body horror, and I happen to have a head laying around, another weird sentence, I decided to use some adhesive Velcro and stick it to top of my neck stump, completing my monster. Then all that was left to do was go all my size Barbie with it and make him look fabulous. And there you have it, one pimped out armored mannequin that I can use to display or create more dope armor and costumes. And the best part is, he has my exact measurements, so next time I want to make armor or a costume, rather than awkwardly trying to wrap tape around myself or whatever, I can just pull a whole form right off of him. Now this dude needs a name, so go ahead and leave it down in the comments section, and maybe we'll vote on it later on to see what we're gonna call him from now on. If you liked what you saw here today, hit me with some of that thumbs up love, and do not forget to subscribe so you know when I release new content. Now, if you like what I do here and feel like supporting it, my Patreon is in the description below. It means the world to me. Every one of you who gives to my Patreon just helps me do all this weird, fun stuff. I really appreciate all you current Patreon members and how much you help me. It really does mean the world to me. Finally, if there's a skill you want to see me cover, why don't you leave it in the comments below and I'll add it to the list. All right, well, I should get going. There's an electrical storm tonight, and I'm gonna try to get this guy alive. We're gonna have conversations worth having. In the meantime, keep leveling up, you.